we should talk about the old cliche. Speaking of the Giants, Bill Parcells used to say it all the time. You never pick up one year where you left off the previous year. And we're going to talk about two of those teams in a positive sense. We're going to talk about Arizona and Houston, but we're going to start with talking about two of those teams in a negative sense, and that's the New York Giants and the Cincinnati Bengals. And Myles, I think if you had told anyone at the start of the season that before the first pitch of the World Series, the New York Giants were going to be out of the pennant race, I think everybody would have said you're nuts. However, next 2 weeks, Miami in Miami, Buffalo in Orchard Park, and this is a team that has looked awful so far. They can easily be 1-5 and basically out of it by October 15th. So I just want to get your initial observations. I'll give you mine. Your initial observations on the Giants after the Monday night debacle, the 24-3 loss to the Seattle Seahawks, in which Daniel Jones was sacked 10 times, and because a receiver was about to throw a pass and was sacked, that counts as a quarterback sack. So their quarterbacks were actually sacked 11 times. And the Giants have spent so much money and draft capital on their offensive line. 2 very high picks at tackle. One is now hurt, Andrew Thomas. One is a disaster, Evan Neal. So give me your RX on the New York Giants as we sit here 4 weeks in, Myles Simmons.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, when you start up front, it just is not good. And, anytime you give up 10 sacks on your quarterback, 1 sack on a receiver, let's call, I mean, it's just an abject disaster, right? And that's an institutional failure. That's not just on the QB. That's not just on the offensive line. It's not just on the coaching. It's everything combining to make one steaming pile of poop. Right, like that's all it is, and I don't know how else to characterize that. But it's just unfortunate when you look at that offensive line and the investments that they've made there. Right, you contrast what the Giants were doing. They had injuries, yes, and I think that's worth noting. But so did the Seattle Seahawks. Right, they were also missing pieces on the OL, and they still went out and they look competent. They had a drive orchestrated by their backup quarterback that ended in a touchdown. So that also tells you something about the different directions where these two organizations are headed. And I think maybe one thing or one image, let's call it, that summed things up better than anything else was after that interception where you see Brian Daboll on the sideline and the cameras catch him and he's got the Surface in his hand and he's about to show Daniel Jones something, and he just gets so frustrated he just tosses the tablet. And that to me is like, man, how many times have we talked about this thing? Like, how many times do we have to go over something until you get it right? And it's just really interesting just based on everything that we saw last year with the Giants, with Daniel Jones, and Saquon Barkley usually in there and helping to really make that offense go. But then the Giants paid Daniel Jones. So you're really, really, really stuck right now if you're the New York Football Giants. And it cannot be a good feeling knowing that you got to play Miami and then Buffalo in the next 2 consecutive weeks.
I'm just going to give you 3 quick stats about the Giants, and then I'm going to give you my theory about the Giants. 3 quick stats. They have been out-sacked this year by their opponents 23-4. 23 sacks given up. 4 sacks on the opposing quarterbacks. In the first half of games this year, the New York Giants have been outscored 77-9. And at home this year in their 2 games, they've been outscored overall 64-3. There is nothing positive about this. And now I've got a theory, Myles. Mm-hmm. And my theory is that the Giants were not that good last year. And I'm telling you, we could debate this. I guarantee you that every person who loves the New York Giants is starting to say right now, well, hold on a second, hold on. They won 10 games last year. You don't win 10 games by accident. And you're right. You're right. I think the Giants deserved to win 9 games in the regular season and a 10th in the playoffs at Minnesota. I'm not saying that it was fluky, that anything like that, because I don't believe that. I think 1 week in the NFL can be a fluke. 17 weeks cannot. So the Giants got what they deserved last year. However, the mistake for the New York Giants is thinking, or as a fan or internally, that you were 85% of the way there. And I'll tell you 2 reasons why I think that. Okay? Entering this season in their own division, the Giants over the last 2 seasons had been 2-10-1. They had won 2 division games, and that counts the Philadelphia playoff game last year. By the way, if you're saying, well, how could it be an odd number? Every team plays 6 division games, but that adds up to 13. I'm counting the loss to Philadelphia in the playoffs. So this is a team that only won 2 division games last year. And if you look at reality right now, after they lost to Dallas 40-0 the first game of the year, they now basically have won 2 of their last 14 division games. And if you looked at the way the Washington Commanders played on Sunday, wouldn't you say that the biggest line of demarcation in the NFC East right now is not between Dallas or Philadelphia and then whoever is third? It is between the Washington Commanders, number 3, and the New York Giants, number 4. I mean, we just witnessed the Washington Commanders playing a valiant game, and Sam Howell playing, I thought, a brilliant overall game against a good defense. And, look, maybe if Ron Rivera goes for 2 at the end of that game, we're talking about a team that has won 2 consecutive games at Lincoln Financial Field, and yet is almost certainly not going to make the playoffs this year. But anyway, I digress. The Giants. So when you talk about maybe they thought they were 85% there or whatever, they were 1 injury away from being abjectly mediocre on offense. And that injury belongs to Andrew Thomas, the left tackle. I would argue that even including Saquon Barkley, that Andrew Thomas, other than Daniel Jones, is the one player on offense that this team could least afford to lose. And he's obviously been lost with a hamstring strain. Those things are tricky. You don't know how long that's going to last. And so I think that it's a thin football team, a thin offense. And that's what we're seeing in the first 4 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I think it clearly is thin. And, anytime a team loses its left tackle, and especially a really, really good left tackle, that changes the complexion of the offense. And it changes what you can call and feel confident in with the pass protection. So that's one element of it. Yeah, and I think that is actually a very big deal. The San Francisco 49ers without Trent Williams at left tackle would be a very different team. The Rams, when they lost Andrew Whitworth, when he was, still playing at that really high level, that makes it a different team. So all these things do absolutely work in concert together. But at the same time, when you're outscored, what did you say it was 77-9? When you're outscored by that margin in the first half, like that is bigger than just your left tackle. I mean, there are so many different problems there where it's hard to just say, okay, like, yes, this, if you change this, then you would have a better result. I mean, I don't even know where to begin with that, especially when you're only scoring 3 points at home. I just, there's just so much wrong that you almost have to strip it down to its most basic parts and say, okay, what are we doing that's positive? Let's try to build off of that. But I don't know what they're doing that's positive because I don't, I'm not privy to what they're being asked to do on every single play.
If you think about it, Miles, this is a team that right now, and again, we can debate why these things have been. But if you take away the 31-point second half in Arizona that just totally saved their bacon, in 4 games, 3.5 games, this team has scored 15 points.
Yeah.
It is shocking how bad the New York Giants are.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.